All right, welcome back to Misery Point Radio. Thanks for joining me again. I, of course, am your host. My name is Mike. And today, we have the first ever returning guest. In fact, the first guest I ever had on Misery Point Radio. Good friend of mine, John Horsley. Co-host of Spoiler Country, host of Haphazard Adventures. So he does podcasting, but he's also a comic book writer, a comic book artist, and dare I say, a creative genius. So back when he was first on the show, we talked about all of the projects he's got in the works, and there was one project in particular that I have been very excited about. It's called the Eynes Anthology, and it's getting ready to go live on Kickstarter tomorrow, February 1st. And I am really excited for this book to come out. And so I invited Johnny back on the show to talk about the status of the book, where it's at, what the goals are for his Kickstarter, and to dig a little deeper into the story to give you an insight as to really what the Eynes Anthology is truly going to be about. And make no joke about it, this guy has got some epic artists and writers working with him on this project, and it's going to be nothing but quality and nothing but piles of awesomeness. So, if you like what you hear today, please back him up on all of his stuff. I promise you, you won't be disappointed. So please welcome back the first ever guest on Misery Point Radio, John Horsley. Johnny, welcome back, brother.
Thanks for having me back, man. I've been waiting for the invite to come back because I had so much fun the first time.
Yeah, no, that was a blast, and the response was super awesome. And for you, things just seem to be taken off at a super rapid pace. So today we're going to talk about your new baby that we kind of touched on last time you were on, but the Eynes Anthology getting ready to go live on Kickstarter.
Yeah, man. The day we're recording this is Thursday, and it goes live tomorrow morning.
I know, nuts.
So if you're hearing this after it goes live, it went live Friday, February 1st at 8 a.m. Pacific, and this has been a grind to get to where I'm at now. I mean, when we talked, months ago about this, it was like, oh yeah, we're shooting for this, and then it all of a sudden it's like, wait, it's tomorrow? Oh my God.
So what's the process been like then? I mean, at one point it was like, yeah, I've got this kind of on the back burner, it's been on my mind, and then all of a sudden you're doing interviews practically every day. You're all over social media with this. You've got people conscripted to work with you. Kenrick Regan did a story for you, your illustrious host from Spoiler Country and a good friend of mine. And you've got...
He's my friend now, bitch.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot. He's no longer allowed to associate with me. And
I claimed him for me.
Nice. And you have Scott Godleski is doing some work for you as well. And
yeah,
man, so let's just talk about what's going on.
It's crazy, man. I'll have an exclusive drop for you here in a minute that I haven't told anybody else in any other show that I'll drop on your show first because we're friends like that. But it's been crazy because I've been working on this on and off for over 2 years, and It was really about 8 months ago, but right around the time I think it was a little, I don't know, when was the first episode released for your show for Misery Point?
For Misery Point, it was back in, I want to say October maybe.
Okay, so I'd already started started more work on this. So it was about August of last year that I was like, you know what? I told everybody this is going to come out. I need to get my ass in gear and do this. So I started working on it more and more hardcore. I mean, I've been working on it off and on for the whole time, but in August I was like, no, I need to dive into this, and this has to happen. I've got to get this out. And I set a date for myself of February 1st, 2019 to launch it. I was like, man, if I'm going to make that launch date, I've got to get my ass in gear. Now, I'd already been working on it off and on throughout the summer, but it was like late August where I was like, I need someone to help me out with this. I need a co-editor. Basically, by that what I mean, not somebody like go through and edit the grammar of the book, but a co-editor in so much somebody to help do all of like the admin stuff, the behind the scenes stuff, like an assistant editor or someone or a co-editor that can come in and like, okay, we need to do this for the website. I need to talk to these 6 people about their projects in the book. And I need this information from people, but I just don't have time to do it because I work a full-time job and I have 5 kids and I have, I'm writing, I'm drawing, I'm inking, I'm coloring all in this book and other stuff. And I've got, I just need some help. So I brought on my friend Casey Allen, who runs the Comic Jam. And I was like, hey, are you interested in this? He was like, fuck yeah, I'm interested, man. I'd love to. So he came on and it's kind of become like, he's taking this on like it's his own baby, he definitely like, doesn't make changes without talking to me because it's my creative baby, but it's definitely our book baby, if that makes any sense at all,
Yeah, for sure.
Because he's pushing it like it's his own, and he has very much had a very large voice in this book, and I will never deny that. He wrote a story for the book. He's helped with the direction of the stories, the direction of the book a ton, and it's been amazing. With him on board, I was able to focus on the things I needed to focus on to get my portion of this book and stuff I needed to do done, like getting all of my pages done, getting the artists and writers all lined up for the first book and the next book, and getting them paid because I've already paid everybody that's in the first book. They've all gotten their paychecks already because I was like, well, instead of making everybody wait until after the Kickstarter to get paid, I'm going to show them that I'm serious and that I am going to take the risk and put risk behind myself. Say, look, I'm taking a risk on this book by paying you up front. So I'm serious, and that was a huge investment, because there's 22 people who worked on this book. And so there's 22 paychecks I had to send out for people with their page rates. And some of them weren't cheap, and that's fine because I got amazing work out of them. Like Scott Godleski, he's a professional artist. And then we paid him professional artist rates because he's a pro in the industry, and it's been an amazing whirlwind. And since August and September timeframe, we've just gone from basically, we're going to do it sometime to we have a date. We're busting our ass for the next 5 months to get this in place, next 6 months to get this done. And I was up, from like August to like November, we were working on it. We'd work on it like, 2-3 times a week and stuff like that. But they come like November, December, Case and I were like every night we'd have calls or we'd be chatting back and forth, a messenger, emails back and forth. I created a OneNote page for note taking, and it has like 60 pages on it, like so many notes, so much information, like it's like our Bible. It has everything in it that Casey and I share back and forth to make notes on. It's like, we use it for like, okay, have we done this for this story? Like, what's done, what needs to be done to make this story completed for the book. And it's been, invaluable to have that. And, with Casey's help, I was able to push this through to where it's at today. And then like this last month, as you mentioned, I've been on the PR buzz, like doing the interview circuit, which has been amazing. But that also involved me reaching out to 150 different podcast websites and interview sites, to schedule interviews to do, which has meant that I've been doing 2 or 3 a day for the last like week and a half, 2 weeks.
So the PR trail for you has been absolutely nuts, and you're doing 50 million interviews a day, as well as trying to schedule and coordinate with artists and writers and pay everybody out of pocket in advance. So you're clearly 100% behind the fact that this is going to be your big all-consuming project for the next however long. When you and I first talked, we talked about the name, the Eynes Anthology, which alludes to the fact that this overall encompassing story takes place over multiple generations with multiple families that all have a very specific tie-in, and it's kind of a horror based. So tell everybody kind of the concept behind the Eynes Anthology and where you have started the entry point for that story.
So the Eynes Anthology comes from the idea I had of I really wanted to tell a multi-generational horror themed story. And the basis of it is there's a family called the Eynes. It's their last name, it's a surname. And throughout time, they have had an affection to or an affinity to or connection with the monsters, the supernatural, the occult, and the things that go bump in the night. And those things that go bump in the night, those monsters, are also attracted to the Eynes themselves. Neither side understands why so much. They just know that since before recorded history, it has been a thing. So what this book does is it tells you short stories somewhere throughout the family tree timeline of the Eynes family and their interaction with these various monsters of the world. Now, the first book is an entry to the world, and it's set up with specific stories that let you know this is what this world is about. They're specifically chosen to not necessarily be connected stories themselves, but to be connected stories in the overarching story, which is going to happen over the course of 4 books, because we plan out 4 books for this first series. And the book itself will tell one giant story, dealing with characters from each individual story, but those individual stories themselves are all, they're all their own contained story. And the goal was to basically tell snippets of a life. Like, I wanted to give you a 6-page preview or a 6-page insight into, Nathaniel Eynes' character. Kind of like you meet him, but he's already an established person at this point in his life, right? He's an older person. You come into a part of his life where something is happening, and through this conversation, you learn about him, or through the story, you learn about him, you learn about the world, and then we move on to the next character in the story, to which you then learn about them. But it's not like an origin and a big arching first battle type of thing. It's like each story, it kind of drops you in the middle of it, and it lets you know, okay, this is the kind of stuff that's going to happen in this world and in this book if you continue to read them. And overall, when all 4 books are done, it'll all tie together and it'll all make more sense. But the first book is really a setup book to say, hey, bad things happened, good things happened. All this stuff in this book, this is what this world is about. This is to let you know, what we're going to do and set you up for the next book.
Can you give us any insight into any details on that first book?
Yeah, so we set up a character, we set up a bad guy in this book called Camelot, and we set up another bad guy in this book called Agnes. Those 2 are going to be very important come book 2 and all the way through to book 4. We also set up a character named Gibson Eynes, who is a member of the Eynes family, but he's not what you'd call a hero. And we have developed a really interesting story arc for him over the course of the 4 books, where when you first meet him, you think one thing, and then by the time you get to the 4th book, you're going to think something completely different of this character. And there's other characters in this book, because the point of the book is like, it's kind of backwards, because, we don't really want to, we're not like, our goal isn't to say like, hey, bad guys are good, they're the heroes of the story. However, in the world of, demons and supernatural, typically monsters and demons have a very long lifespan, right? Like, in most lore, demons don't really die unless you vanquish them. Right. However, humans do die. So you'll see characters like Camelot, who is a demon, who will show up in multiple storylines and in multiple timelines with different characters. So what the stories are about, or what their goal is to show that it's the strength of the family through multiple generations that will take on and defeat these demons and deal with these demons. And it kind of like the timeline aspect is there to show you that this has been going on for a long time. So that satisfaction at the end, or the satisfaction that is going to happen, in book 4, whether it be one side or the other, is going to be, you'll by the time you get there, you'll have enough information about both sides of the characters to be invested into it, because you'll think, oh, this happened to this guy back, 100 years ago, and it's happening again to this guy now, and something similar happened to this guy. It's all building blocks to get to a bigger story at the end.
So is each individual book, we'll call it, as part 1 of 4 of the anthology, is each book centered around specifically one character or one set of characters, or are we going to see flash forwards and flashbacks within each book of different characters that appear in other books as well?
Definitely the latter. It's each book is set up to we didn't want to focus on characters specifically per book. We wanted to focus on stories per book. So the first book, you're going to meet characters they'll reappear in books 2, 3, and 4, but each book itself is set up to be a kind of like a theme. Like the theme of book 1 is anything can happen. And that kind of sets you up to where world building. I always have a problem saying that phrase, world building. It's a world building book, right? And then book 2 and book 3 are going to be more of a meat type of book, right? It's going to be more intricate stories, more backstory, more getting you built up. And then book 4 is going to be like a conclusion type book. But they're laid out in such a specific way that you could read book 1, you could read book 4, you could read book 3, you could read them in any order and get a satisfying read out of the book, or you could read any story and get a satisfying read out of that story. However, if you read all 4 books, you're going to get a satisfying read out of a bigger story. It's been a very difficult process to put this all together, And the execution of it, I hope we nail it. I can't say we have because we haven't finished book 4 yet, but what we have lined up right now, the way book 1 reads, the way book 2 reads, I think Casey and I are doing a great job of getting these in place. And if we're able to knock this out, which I'm sure we can, because I've got a great team of people working with me on this throughout all the creators on these books, it's going to be an interesting thing because you'll be able to literally pick up any one of the books and read it and enjoy it, because you're not going to, the whole idea is yes, like Camelot is introduced in the very first story of the very first book, right? But he's going to be in book 3 as well. But if you just read book 3, you're not going to have to read book 1 to understand who Camelot is. However, if you have read book 1, you'll understand a whole lot more of who he is. That's the goal of the stories in the books.
So theoretically speaking, could you jump into any book in any order and still get the overall arching idea behind the greater universe?
You'd get the idea behind it, but the actual overarching story would probably be hard to grasp if you just started at book 3. However, that's not okay. That wouldn't stop the enjoyment of just book 3. It's if you want to know what. Long story short, not really. However, it's not going to mess up reading a book 3 first. Like if you read book 3, book 1, book 2, then book 4, you'd be able to figure out the overarching story. It'd be better if you read 1, 2, 3, 4 in a row, obviously, because then it's building that way. But as long as if you're going to read all the books, as long as you read book 4 last, then you're going to get the overarching story and the conclusion. I mean, if you want to read things backwards, you could. It's fine. The way they're structured to be individual books with a tie-in story around all of them.
Kind of like an episode of the X-Files.
Kind of, yeah.
So you've got book 1 is completely finished, correct?
It is 98% finished. We've got 2 stories that have a couple pages left to be finished, and the artists are working on them right now. And
this is book 1 specifically what's hitting the Kickstarter?
Yes.
Or is this to fund the entire
This
project?
is to fund book 1. And book 1's going to be about, it's set for 64 pages, but it looks like we're going to be at about 76 pages, I think, or 70-some pages. We have extra material that I don't want to cut out of the book. So I'm probably going to expand it a little bit depending when the final pages come back, because we have all the art pages done, and then I've hired DC Hopkins to come in and do the design work for the book. So the book's going to get professionally designed out with the pages and layouts and stuff like that. So that's going to happen probably mid-campaign. So I'll know the actual page number. I mean, the price of the book's not going to change. The price of the book is $20 to buy the actual physical book. So whether it's 64 pages or 78 pages or 85 pages, the price is going to be the same. We're just working it out to where we don't want to cut anything out of the book that's going to be important. So we want to make sure it's the best book it can possibly be.
So each book is larger than, say, your standard comic, right? Are these set up more like a graphic novel style?
Yeah, they're like a small graphic novel, because a comic book, your standard comic book is 22 pages, right? So we're going for 64 to 78, somewhere in that range, and they'll be square bound, not saddle stapled or saddle stitched. So they'll be square bound, prestige format graphic novels, type, and they'll collect together to be 280 pages, something like that, of material once all 4 books are done.
Oh, that's awesome! And are these going to be, what's the presentation style? Are these going to be like super hardbound style or traditional paperback?
So we're starting paperback. We're starting out at the beginning, just trade paperback soft covers. If we fund enough, one of our stretch goals is going to be to make it a hardback book.
Oh, as the version or as kind of a limited edition option?
So we're going to offer. So here's the thing: is we're going to offer a hardback cover as limited edition in the campaign outright. So if you wanted to pay an extra amount of money and get a hardback copy that's nice, super awesome, you can. If we fund enough and go to a stretch goal, they're all going to be hardback, and the people who bought the special edition will have it'll be even better. We'll add more stuff to their edition to make it limited edition. But if we fund enough, we'll just make all of them hardcover.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, so in that case, there'd be 2 hardcovers. There'd be the regular hardcover, and then there'd be not really a variant, but the Kickstarter special version, which will probably, I don't have the details of what it would be yet, but it'll probably be something like, spot gloss. It'll come hand numbered of a certain number. So if we sell 50 of them, there'll be 1 of 50. They'll be signed, and I'll probably draw a sketch or something like that to make them special.
Awesome. They'll actually be worth less money when you sign them.
Probably.
So where you mentioned that you've already got work going on book 2 and book 3.
Yeah.
So where are you at in the process of each of those?
Book 2 is about 40 to 50% done as far as art goes. We have we have 8 of the 10 stories picked out to be in book 2, and of those 8 stories, 4 of them have finished art, and the 5th one is being worked on right now. So I still have to pick 2 stories for it, and we have to finish out the art and all like the coloring and lettering for the book. Book 3, we have 1 story currently picked out, and it is actually done as far as everything. It's a 10-page story completed, and we're starting to work on what stories we want to put in that book. Book 4, we have a plan for, but we're not picking anything for book 4 until after we just finish out book 2. Once we decide all the scripts for book 2 and have that one to where it's almost done, then we'll go in and say, okay, what do we have what stories do we have left? What do we need to write and create to make book 4 the best possible ending we can make it?
So when you're writing each book, are you considering the next book and already writing that next book at the same time, or are you kind of finishing the storyline for each book individually and then taking that finished product on that storyline to begin the next storyline?
So since these books have multiple writers in them, for each short story has a different writer pretty much, and I wrote several stories, and Casey wrote a couple stories throughout each book. But ultimately each book has, let's say, 7 different writers on it, or 8 different writers on it. The process really has been, I wanted to give the writers of these stories complete freedom to come in and tell the stories they wanted to write within the guidelines that I set out for them. So what we have is we have a bunch of stories written by writers within the theme of what the book is, dealing with the characters, telling different types of stories. And then the job for Casey and I is to take those stories, read through them, figure out where they fit in which book theme we want them to make fit, and then use our stories to tie everything together, which sounds like a backwards ass way to do this, but it's actually working out incredibly well.
Right. So
because nothing seems forced that way, because we don't have stories that are forced to be in continuity. We have stories that are being told, and then we just create little snippets of things around those stories to make them fit into the theme of what we want for that book. And for the first book, it came out. I'm super proud of how it came out doing it that way. And book 2 is looking the same way.
With all of the writers that you're working with, how does that affect the art, the actual physical format of the pages? Is this something that you're using different artists as well, or are we going to have a consistent look throughout the anthology?
Absolutely not consistent, no. And that's on purpose. We have, if you look at the art for the first book, each story is done in pretty much a completely different style. We've got people who do ink wash artwork. We've got professional grade artwork with tones. We've got traditional artwork. We've got very specific types of art, and that was on purpose, because what we did with the scripts is once we had the scripts in and we read them and improved them, it's like, oh, these are great, or I read through them and improved them. I then started pairing up those scripts with artists that I wanted to work with, that I liked their style, and I thought their style will fit this story really well. And it wasn't. I don't care at all if the stories look similar to each other, even if like story A is about these 2 characters and story B is about these 2 characters. Those 2 stories don't have to look the same to me. The characters should look similar enough to know who they are, but the stories don't have to be the same artist. And that reason for that is because I wanted the stories to reflect their spot in time and reflect the tone of what the writer was trying to get through. And I want the art to reflect their spot in time and their spot of what the story is about, because as time is a real thing in our life, things that happen today are not the same as happened 100 years ago, are not the same perception as 100 years ago, and don't look the same as 100 years ago. So I purposefully have artists that don't look the same throughout the book, because they're drawing and writing about different spots in time throughout history. So if they all look the same, well, I mean, that would be that's fine. But having these different artists and these different feels pushes more of this fact is all these stories are connected, yet they're all different, because they're, one's from 1850, one's from 1950, one's from 1640, and they have art to reflect the style of what the story is, as well as the time frame they're in.
Got it. So the art style is indicative of whatever period that particular story happens to be in.
It's indicative of the period it's in, as well as the tone of the story. So if the tone of the story is set in like the 1800s, but it's like, more of an upbeat type of horror ethereal story, where it's not like psychologically dark, but it's kind of scary a little bit, it's going to be one style. It's kind of probably a cleaner style. But if it's set in the same exact time period, however, it's a really dark story that deals with a lot of psychological stuff, and it's basically a giant mindfuck, then it's going to have a style of art that reflects that. And that was the point. Is I wanted to make sure these were paired up with artists that would reflect the tone of the story as well as the time period. And also doing this allowed me to be in more control of the look of the book, because instead of a normal anthology for comics where people submit stories, in those it's like, hey, you're a writer, you're get a team together, get your story drawn up and submit it, and we'll put it in if we like it. And that way, the writer and the creator the writer of the story, has the job of going out and finding and paying all the people. This way, it allowed me as the editor and creator of this book and the creative controller of this book to make sure that the feel of each story and the visuals of each story match what I wanted it to be. Even though it's stories I didn't write, I was able to pick the artist and the creative team each by piece to have the end result of the book. Because the ultimate goal of the book is to make the best book possible. And that involves bringing in people from all walks of life and all parts of the world to tell these stories and to pair them up with people who wouldn't normally pair up because they would never know each other.
Awesome. So when we're talking about horror, you touched on a couple of different kinds. You touched on like maybe a psychological horror, or as what you referred to as kind of a mind fuck.
Yeah.
And the traditional concept of horror goes after either scares or as, blood and guts, kind of hack and slash. So what kinds of horror do you think is going to be the most prevalent throughout this book?
So it's interesting because we call it a horror book because it deals with supernatural and it deals with monsters and demons and stuff like that. However, we don't rely on hack and slash guts. We don't rely on trying to scare you or trying to like do jump scares and like, oh my God, that monster's so scary. We don't rely on that. What our stories are basically about is they're about demons, supernatural stuff, and shit that is just scary. Like there's a story in this book called The Wanderer, written by Michael Tanner, drawn by Clayton Hollyfield. And it's a story that it's horror in nature because of what it deals with, but it's really about a guy who's really fucking evil and just a bastard. And it's the kind of, when I say this, I don't say it lightly. It's the kind of story that when I finished reading the script the first time, I was like, oh, I'm uncomfortable. And you know me, that takes a lot.
Yeah, right.
It's so much that we hired a colorist to come color the story. He read the script and said, I can't do this.
Really?
Yeah. And
because of appropriateness of content, or
because of what because of what the character does in the story.
Okay.
This story is a mindfuck. It's a story that leaves you hating this character. It's a story that leaves you walking away going, how did they print this? But it's not a story that's like grotesque or over the top to be grotesque or over the top. It's a story to set up a character who is an evil bastard, and it's all done in proper context and it's done well. It just leaves you with the icky taste in your mouth when you're done with it, and it's a beautiful story as far as getting those things across. And it fits into this book because we wanted to put something in this book like this that sets you up to say, hey, this kind of nasty evil shit can definitely happen in this world, so don't get attached.
Just don't get attached,
yeah.
Like your favorite HBO show.
Right.
So what book does this particular story, The Wanderer, take place in?
It's in book 1. It's in the first book.
Oh.
Yeah.
Got it. So you're going to get a dose of fucking disturbing reality right out the gate.
Like I said, book 1, we picked stories specifically that set you up for things you can expect in this world and in the future books.
Okay. Now, you had reached out to me, a couple of weeks ago and said, hey, I'm thinking about doing some kind of promotion with some music, and said, hey, can you put out the interest out there to see if some people want to contribute? Tell me exactly what that project is, how it relates to the book, and what the music is going to be used for specifically.
Sure. So as you know, and I talked about before, I was in bands as a kid. In college, I recorded and played shows and loved it. And excuse me, music's always been a huge part of my life. And one of the things that I think you can do really well with horror and supernatural stuff is pair up songs with stories, right? Because as you're reading something scary or something that makes you go, there's music. And I don't know about you, but whenever I read anything, I have music in my head. It's just the way I am. So,
right.
And I wanted to do a theme song for this book. I wanted to have some kind of an 80s horror type theme for this book. And I contacted my friend Joey Edsall, who's also a writer on, he wrote it not in this book, but he has a story in book 3, I believe it is. And he also composes music. And I was like, hey, do you want to help me out with this? He's like, yeah, sure. What do you need? So I kind of described what I was looking for. And he's like, yeah, sure. So he went away for a day or two and came back. And if you watch that video on the press package page I sent you, or any times the thing Kenrick voices over for the Eynes Anthology, that music in the background, that very 80s horror theme music, he custom wrote for this book. And, we got a theme song for the book. And he also wrote another song that's going to be tied to another story. So that got me thinking, I wonder if I can get a song tied to each story. Now, the song doesn't have to be specifically written for that story. My idea is find songs that thematically represent the story, right? Like musically and lyrically, and kind of the way they build and go through their song, kind of like fit up with the story. Because I'm not a big fan of like writing a song that like, oh, this song is about this story, and this song tells the story, because it gets kind of cheesy and lame. But
sure, having
a song that has the same feeling and the same themes of a story as far as how it plays out in your head, that's really cool to me. So when I asked you this, I got a couple emails from people that used to get my contact to, and I actually worked it out with two of them to allow me to use some of their songs on the soundtrack and tie them into stories, which is pretty cool. Because then as of right now, I've got 5 different groups or bands or musicians contributing songs to this soundtrack. And the idea is I'm going to tie each one to a story, and then I'm going to release the soundtrack either digitally, or I might actually get it printed onto a CD. Like you can get it pressed, because I found out I can press 100 copies of a CD in a slipcase for like $100. It's super cheap. Oh. So I might just do that and like send them out to the people who contributed, like send them out to like backers and stuff. But that goes into a whole other thing where I've got to make sure that all the bands are okay with me doing that, which so far everybody has been. But I want
legal licensing,
right? I want to make sure that everything's. I don't want to piss anybody off. I want to make sure everybody's on board, And so far everybody is, right? Because I've been very upfront with what I'm doing to everybody I've talked to. I'm like, this is what I'm doing. This is my plan. Are you on board with this? And someone like, so far people have been like, yeah, that's awesome. Which is great. So I tied them up to various songs, and I'm still working on it. I haven't had a lot of time to work on it, because the soundtrack isn't my major project right now. The book is, but the soundtrack will be done before the campaign is done. So I've been working solely on getting the campaign and the book ready to go for tomorrow. And then once it's launched and I'm not like stressing about everything else, I will then go back to lining songs up with stories and finding and finishing out the soundtrack.
So would that be something, for instance, that shows up on a YouTube channel as a digital novel, and then as you're reading the novel, the music is playing in the background? Is that the concept?
So what I'm going to do with it is, that's actually a good idea. I didn't think about that. But what I'm going to do with it is over on my podcast with Ken Wrights, Spoiler Country, where actually we've recorded, and we're working to record little interviews with each creator for each story. Right. So doing like a 5 or 10 minute interview with each person, like the inker, the writer, the colorist, the letterer, everybody I can get to agree to it. I'm recording something with them. And then we're making an episode, a podcast episode for each story, right? So throughout the month of February, we're going to be releasing 9 or 10 episodes, one for each story in the book, on our Spoiler Country channel. And in that episode, there's going to be a little bit of the song that's tied to that story as the intro, with some voiceover that Kenrick did of the story. And then at the end, in the beginning, we're going to mention who the song's by and what the song is. And then at the end, we're going to play the entire song for people who want to hear it. And then we're also going to offer all the songs as a digital reward, or not a reward, a digital. It's not going to be like you buy the soundtrack. It's going to be a digital incentive. So if you buy the book, we're going to give you the soundtrack as well, type of thing. And then the soundtrack will have some notes saying, no, this song is representative of this story. So, play this one while you read this story, or something along those lines.
Okay, awesome. So then, what is your Kickstarter goal? Do you have a dollar figure in mind that you need to hit to make this happen?
Yeah, I do. So the Kickstarter goal does not include reimbursing myself for all the people I paid already. I'm just eating that cost for myself, because again, I just want people to read this book. I want people to love it as much as I do, and see all the love and care that all the creators put into this book. That's my goal. So I'm just kind of trying to fund the printing and the shipping of 1,000 copies of the book. And this includes, so the price that I'm looking to raise is $4,500. And that covers printing, shipping it to me, and shipping it to all the backers, as well as printing up and providing all of the other rewards. Like we have a couple rewards at the $200 range, which is original art. So I actually physically I paid the artist, and then I physically bought the pages from them as an addition to it, so I could offer them in the Kickstarter. So.
Oh, that's a unique reward.
Right. So not only, and two of the artists are outside of the country. One of them's in Argentina, one of them's in the Philippines, and they've never had their artwork sold in the US before. So I paid them, I said, what do you want for the actual pages? They gave me a price. I said, cool, I'll pay that. Give me the shipping amount, which is insanely expensive to ship from Argentina, by the way. 8 pages cost over $100 to ship, and that's it.
Oh my God.
I can ship that locally for like $20 in the US, but so I paid him his page rate he wanted, plus I paid him for the actual pages and then the shipping to mail them to me. And this will be the first time these two artists, it's Sebastian Baiano and Dennis Torona, two amazing artists. They're great in their field. It's the first time their art's ever going to be offered in the US, which is awesome.
Oh, wow. That is definitely awesome. So $4,500 goal for the initial press of 1,000 copies.
Yes.
Correct?
Correct.
What's your time frame? I mean, have you given yourself a window on what you need to make this happen?
So we're planning to launch it tomorrow on the 1st, and I'm planning to have it end on March 5th. So
Wow, that's a lofty goal to get it, a month.
Yeah, I mean, most Kickstarters will last for 30 days. This one's lasting for 32 days, only because. So I'm using one of the things I'm going to do to help incentivize people is, you do like events. So we're going to do a special event on Valentine's Day because it's going to go to Valentine's Day, right? We're going to do a special event on March 1st because that's my birthday. And then we're extending it to March 5th, and just two more days in a normal campaign because Casey, my co-editor, that's his birthday. So we're going to end it on his birthday so we can do our last final push as like a birthday thing for Casey.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so that'll be fun.
Well, I'm thinking the concept of your story is epic. I love the fact of how it spans generations and ties together seemingly unrelated story arcs that actually are related. And I love the fact that you're crossing different kinds of art styles with different writers and different artists. That's a very, very large undertaking. I'm sure the scheduling for that alone has been nightmarish.
It's been a trick for sure, but it actually was easier to schedule that than it was to schedule all of the interviews and crap that I'm doing.
Oh, yeah?
Not crap.
Awesome.
I love doing them. I do them all day. I don't want to say I'm like, oh, the interview crap, I don't want to do them. I love doing them. It's been a trick to make this work to where I can do 2 or 3 interviews a day and get them done and get them out there without pissing off my wife or my job.
Yeah, right. Well, and your wife, Kaylee, also is a podcaster, so I'm sure that she is very well aware of all of the efforts that it is requiring to make this happen, and I'm sure she's 100% behind you.
Oh, she has been so I cannot tell you how supportive she's been of this book and of me doing all these interviews. Back in beginning of January, I warned her, I was like, just so you know, the book's going on live on February 1st. And she goes, why would you launch a book in February? That's literally our busiest month of the year. And I'm like, because I hate myself, apparently. Because we have birthdays, our anniversary. I mean, just February is a super busy month every year. And I don't know. I mean, I'm a glutton for punishment, apparently. But I told her, I was like, hey, just so you know, I'm going to be doing a lot of interviews because I'm pushing the press on this thing really, really hard. So it sells. And she goes, okay. And then she's been super supportive of me, it being 6 o'clock. I'm like, all right, babe, I'm going to go hide in the bedroom for an hour and go talk to some people on a podcast. She goes, okay. And she's been more supportive than I expected her to be because it's been quite a lot.
Awesome. So why don't you tell everybody where they can find all the links and all the stuff related to your epic Eynes Anthology that's getting ready to hit Kickstarter?
Sure. So you can find it on Twitter at Eynes Anthology, same as Instagram at Eynes Anthology. We post things there all the time. Anything special we do throughout the campaign, just follow the Twitter account. You'll see it there. If you want to go straight to the campaign, you can go to Eynes Anthology. That's EYNES anthology.com/Kickstarter, and it will take you right directly to the Kickstarter page. And if you just go to EynesAnthology.com, at the top link, there's a link that says sign up for updates. If you sign up for email updates, you'll get all the email updates throughout the campaign as we're going through of any kind of extra rewards we're doing or any kind of contest we're going to do throughout the day, because we're going to do some special stuff throughout the month to make everybody have a lot of fun and get some cool stuff.
Awesome. Johnny, thanks for joining me again on Misery Point Radio. I definitely appreciate you coming on. And I wish you the best of luck on your Kickstarter. I give you my word, I'm going to be one of your first backers. I'm really looking forward to this. As you know, since I first talked to you about this, I've been very excited about this project. So everybody, check out the Eynes Anthology, back it on Kickstarter, share it with your friends, share it on the Book of Faces, share it on the Twitter, do everything humanly possible. You've got 1 month to make this happen, and I'd love to see a very good friend of mine have some success in this very lofty project. So thanks again for hanging out on Misery Point Radio. And Johnny, thank you again, brother. Good luck to you.
Thanks so much, man. I appreciate it.